Okay, so let's talk. Let's talk about plant care. And no, not the plant care that we've all heard before about a specific plant. Let's have a conversation about how to keep your entire collection happy, alive, and thriving. What is up, my planting people? My name is Lithius, and welcome to Roots Ready. So I would consider myself quite a simple guy with quite a simple collection of plants. I would say I have a medium-sized collection. It's definitely not huge. There are places in my house, believe it or not, where you won't find any plants, mainly where there are no windows. But one of the things that I really try to do is make this whole plant care journey as streamlined and as simple as possible, because burnout is a real thing. Because whatever we can do to make this hobby as enjoyable as possible, I think we should do. One of the ways that I do that is I always try to keep on hand a couple of different things so I can respond as quickly as possible and respond to my plant's needs, so I don't have to scramble around ordering things on Amazon so that it comes the next day, really stressing out about certain things. I know that I have them on hand, I know where to find them, and I know that I can tackle things as and when I see it. So I remember when I first started on this plant journey, I was quite a simple guy, as I am now. I just thought that, if you get a plant in front of a window and you water it, that's all you need. And yes, your plant will probably stay alive. It won't thrive though. It's just going to stay there and it won't do much for you. So what I then realized was that there's a whole lot more to this plant journey than advertised. So one of the first things you need to think about after you've purchased your plant is how to feed them, because the light and the water is only one half of that equation. They need to have the nutrients in order to convert that light into energy. And to do that, I use fertilizer, in particular Formulex. Now you need to find the right fertilizer for you, because there are so many out there. There's some that you have to mix yourself. There are some that are higher in certain nutrients to promote foliage, to promote root growth, to promote blooming. So you need to find what's right for you. For me, I like to use this one right here, which is a universal profile. One of the reasons I really like this brand, I'm not sponsored by the way, I just really like their products, is that it can be used for both soil and hydroponic setups. Now, if you've been following my journey for a long time, you will know that I do use pon and leca in some of my plants. So this is a great catch-all product for my use. It's quite simple. All you need is 5 milliliters per liter for soil and 10 milliliters per liter for hydroponic. I also like to supplement it with a little bit of Super Thrive. I also like to supplement it with a little bit of Super Thrive. This is a small but mighty bottle. I've had this almost a year and I've still got about a quarter left. So it's quite a lot, because you only need about a few drops. Now, there are different instructions on the back that tells you for whatever purpose you're using it, how much to put in. So if you're using hydroponics, you add a little bit more. If you can use it for just weekly watering, you can use it as a foliar spray, and for a whole other range of stuff. So just read the instructions and you can add it to any other fertilizer as well. So the logistics, how do I fertilize? In the winter, a lot of the plants that we care for, as they are tropical, they will start to slow down in their growth. So for example, I noticed especially on my ficus trees that they completely slow down, whereas in the summer and spring, they might give me a couple of leaves a month, maybe 2 or 3 in a month, if I'm lucky. In the winter, that will cut right back and I might not get a leaf in a whole entire month. So because of that, you want to pull back on your fertilizer, because you can develop nutrient burn on your leaves, which is an extreme buildup of salts in the soil, and that can really damage your leaves. So the way that I usually do it is water the fertilizer in every other watering, or with my semi-hydroponic plants, I will water every other reservoir. So I will put one reservoir with fertilizer, then when that's dried up, the next one I will add in some nutrients and I'll continue that process. But in the summer and spring times, I've upped this to once a week. Now, I've only just started that this year and my plants seem to be loving it. Honestly, the growth has been incredible on so many of these plants that I thought were slow growing. So I get them watered a lot more frequently in the summer and spring months. It's a lot warmer, is when the plants really kick up in their growth, and then cut that back during the autumn and winter months. The next thing you want to think about is just the watering, the actual process of watering. And what I've found to really help to streamline this process and make it a whole lot easier, to cut down the amount of time I spend going back and forth to the sink to fill up my watering can or a little bottle that I used to use, is this right here. This is a pressure sprayer, and this one in particular is an 8-litre one. They do get a lot larger. I think at that point they come as a backpack, and that's just a bit too much for the collection that I have. But with this, I only need to fill it up twice to get every single plant in my collection. The ones upstairs, the ones downstairs in the different rooms. It's really simple. It's got a shoulder strap so you can wear it and make it a whole lot easier. It is quite heavy when it's full, but when it's on your shoulder, you can sort of manage it a whole lot better. And also, when I use it, I feel a little bit like Walter White from Breaking Bad. I feel like a chemist. Literally, I'm just here just spraying different things. I'm pumping it up. It just makes it a little bit of fun as well, because I find that sometimes watering plants can just be a little bit boring and a little bit same old, same old. If the water sprayer is a little bit too high tech and you don't need it at the moment, what I do is I just use an old water bottle or something like that. In particular, this one right here, which I use for a long time and I still use today. This is literally an old Coke bottle, and I bought this from Amazon. I think it came from China, but it's literally just like a watering can nozzle. So you have your typical one over here that you can sort of water a bit more heavily and help direct it a little bit better. And then you pop the lid back on and you can water this one almost like a shower head. And this has been absolutely great. I really enjoy it. It really helps me to reach the harder to reach areas at the back of my grow tent, for example. There are some plants. I have a carnivorous plant, which I don't fertilize at all in the soil. I do feed it with little bugs that I might find around the house or in the garden. But I will fill this up with just plain water, for example, and just water. Or if during the week that one of my plants may have been really, really dehydrated, I just quickly top this up and just water one plant at a time instead of watering with an entire 8-litre pressure sprayer. And the next part I think about is what I call the plant A and E. And that's the different things we need to do to sort of manage pest outbreaks, fungal outbreaks, and so on. I have two ways of dealing with pests. The first way is using non-chemical warfare, basically. So I use a combination of neem oil and a bit of insecticidal soap to help mix it in with some water. And I put it in my pressure sprayer. With these two, I spray my plants once a week, or I try to. Sometimes I might miss a week and water it once every 2 weeks. But I have a regular routine that I just spray my plants with just generally. So I don't have to have an outbreak or have any signs of pests. I just spray this. The brilliant thing about this is that it is an on-contact type of solution, which means that it won't build up in your plants. It won't cause any long-term damage, nothing like that. It's something that you can just use to also just to keep your leaves nice and clean as well. So you can go through once you're finished and just wipe them down. It's a great routine just to keep your plants looking and feeling great and to potentially avoid a bigger outbreak in the future. You might say to me, Lithius, what happens if I've tried everything, I've tried to keep on top of these things and they just don't work? A controversial opinion would be to use a chemical pesticide such as this one. This is Provanto. It's very good on a wide range of insects like thrips, green flies, caterpillar, whitefly, lots of other things. The only pest I think it doesn't work on is spider mite. So I actually prefer to use the insecticidal soap and neem oil to handle spider mites. But I'll use this if there's like a thrip outbreak. I had a thrip, a small, almost, it could have been disastrous, thrip outbreak, which is why I bought this. After 2 applications, gone every single one of them. And then I just stay on top of it with the regular spray. One of my biggest bugbears, and excuse the pun, are fungus gnats. They are So annoying, they're frustrating. These bugs, I feel like they can fly anywhere, but they always choose to fly right up in your face, up your nose, around your ears. They're really, really, really frustrating. If you have plants, the likelihood is that you will experience them one way or another. And to tackle that, there's nothing better than mosquito bites, or this one I have, which are mosquito dunks. The way I use this, you can see this one ring, I break off a little bit, you don't need loads. I let this soak in some water overnight to really activate it, and then I water this into my plants. I find that fungus gnats do not like semi-hydro, inorganic materials. I have no issues with them. I only use this for my soil based substrates, and this works wonders. You use this, give yourself 2 weeks, you won't have a single fungus gnat in your house, because it just sort of stops them at their juvenile stage. So as they're feeding in the soil, it will just do the job, and eventually the adults, they don't have a terribly long lifespan, so they will die, and 2 weeks you'll be fungus gnat free. Get yourself some mosquito bits or some mosquito dunks. They work wonders. Staying in the A&E, one of the other things that I like to have on hand is hydrogen peroxide, the 3% solution, and a fungal spray. So this is a really concentrated one, which you have to sort of add to a different sprayer of some sorts, and then you can use it as you wish. This I will sort of use as a soil drench every now and then. For example, with my Hoyas, I had earlier this year, I had like a small mealybug issue. I use hydrogen peroxide as the first port of call. Fungicide is really, really handy, especially if you're doing a lot of propagations, because having your plants in a really super high humid environment can promote fungus and mold. So what I like to do is just go ahead and spray inside of my propagation boxes to keep that at bay. Now, also, I will tend to spray my leaves if I ever see any sort of dark spots. Anything that might look a little bit suspicious, if there's some yellowing, but there's no cause for yellowing, you know what I mean? Like if there's, if I've been taking care of this plant really, really well, and all of a sudden there's a little yellow spot, I'll spray it, because that's a likelihood it could be fungal. And fungus spreads very, very quickly, so you want to stay on top of it. So this is a big recommendation. If you don't want to go down this chemical route, you can use hydrogen peroxide to tackle fungal diseases as well. So how do we administer these pesticides? So I've already shown that I have my pressure sprayer, and this is the main way that I apply it to all of my plants. So I add enough, usually 1 8 liter will be more than enough to do my entire collection. I'll add the appropriate amount of pesticides to this, and I'll go ahead, put this on the spray nozzle, and go to town on all of the plants. If you have a smaller collection, you might want to consider getting a smaller pressure sprayer, which I actually had before my larger one, and I tend to not use as much. But if you have a smaller collection, you probably will end up using it a lot more. It doesn't have the extended spray nozzle, so you can't really get into nooks and crannies. It's more about sort of from distance spraying down your plants. But if you have a really, really small collection, you might just consider getting a small spray bottle. Now, it could be anything. This one I got as a present from a lovely friend of mine, and I've been using this ever since. You can get yourself just a regular spray bottle. You can reuse something that you've used for other purposes. Whatever you have, you could just use this and spray down an individual plant at a time. It's a really cheap and inexpensive way to sort of administer your pesticides. If you want to see really, really good growth in your plants, to keep them growing at a steady pace and to continue seeing that growth, you might consider upsizing your pot. But I doubt that when you do that, you're going to throw your pots away. So what I've done over the years is I've collected a whole stack of old pots. So this just sits in my shed outside, and as and when I need it, I can pop in there, get a plant pot. They're not clean. I don't clean them before I put it out. I just stick them outside, and when I need them, I'll give them a good wash down. But whenever I need, if I need to upsize a pot, I can come here and I can see what I've got available, and I could just go ahead and transplant the plant. What I typically do as well is I have some small disposable cups that I like to keep for any plants that I am propagating. I could just stick one in there at a time, and when they're big enough, I can stick them in a proper pot like so. I also like to keep on hand small bowls like this. So this one actually bought specifically for my semi-hydro plants. So I can just stick a planter in here, add some water, and I can just use this to hold the reservoir in. So this works really, really well. So if you have any plates or bowls, that are chipped that you're not planning to use, you can always keep them, reserve them for your plants. It can act as a cash pole. It's got multi-purposes. So definitely consider holding on to these because they really, really come in handy. Another thing I like to keep hold of are little glass pots. So for example, this was hummus, I believe, and this was something else. So I like to keep a couple of these on hand. They come in really, really handy if you're propagating a plant. If you have a small sort of stem cutting, you can stick it in there. You can put some plastic wrap over the top, and there you have it, a small self-contained humidity dome for your plant. I also like to use it as a cash bowl. This one is a little bit dramatic, but for example, I can stick a plant pot in here and use this smaller glass containers for a reservoir. So they come in really, really handy. So there was a point where I had way too many. I was keeping way too many of them. Recently went through a little purge. So I only kept just a handful. So if you're ready to transplant your plant, what I always have on hand is a range of substrates. My go-to is typically this or this, which is leca. This is the Vitalink leca. It's definitely an inconsistent type of leca. It's not round, it's not uniform. They come in different shapes and sizes, but I find they work really, really well for me. They might not look the best, but they definitely do the job. I also like to keep some pon on hand as well. This is my favorite substrate for semi-hydro planting. I just really like the way that it's really well draining. It's really fine. Whoops, just dropped loads of it on the floor. It's really fine. You know, it's almost like soil. You can treat it as a soil substrate as well, almost like soil. So you can water it in your plant. You don't have to keep a reservoir for it. But you know, I tend to use it as a semi-hydro planting setup. And this one is actually repurposed. When I transplanted my huge Ficus elastica, I took it out of pond. I actually kept this. I washed it. I boiled it a little bit and I let it dry. So I'm actually going to reuse it, which is a great substitute to have. And if you don't want to go down the semi-hydro route, you can stick to soil. And this is my Coca-Cola mix. So I actually expanded the entire block and I just go in there. It's ready to use. I've mixed in a little bit of pon in here already, so I can just go in really, really quickly and transplant any plants that I want to keep in a soil type substrate. And this is what I'm working with. This is the soil that I will use. Now, obviously, you can use any soil that you're comfortable with. I like to use Coca-Cola because I find that it is a lot easier to manage than regular soil, because with soil there are organic materials in there that could potentially be harboring some nasties, some bugs. It might have fungal diseases. But with Coca-Cola, I find that it's quite sterile. It has no nutrients, so you have to sort of supplement that quite early on. For plants that are prone to root rot, where bacteria can really take hold of the roots really, really quickly, I like to use this substrate because it really limits the possibility of that happening. The final substrate that I would recommend you have on hand is this. Believe it or not, this is sphagnum moss. I've already used a little bit of it, and I just sort of keep it on hand so I can just go in and break off a little bit as and when I need it, rehydrate it and use it primarily for plants that I am either propagating. If I have an aeroid, typically I can put them in a little bit of damp sphagnum moss in my grow tent or in a humidity bag, and most likely it will go ahead and root into the sphagnum moss. So I don't use it as a long-term substrate, but for that propagation, if I'm germinating some of my anthurium seeds, I'll do it in this substrate over here, which is sphagnum moss. Sometimes when you're trying to root a plant or germinate seeds, it can be really, really tough to get them going. And to sort of support that process, these are the two things I like to keep on hand. The first one and my go-to is a heat mat, a really, really effective way of promoting root growth. With this one, this is a reptile one, but it works just as fine. I like to put a cloth over this just to give the plants just a little bit of space between the heat mat and the roots so that they don't sort of cook. Really, really helps to promote that root growth. I have two. This is my smaller one. I have a much larger one, which is currently being used, so I can't pull it out just yet. But I use this one for a particular plant if it's a large plant. Or if I have a tray of seedlings, I could just stick them on this and it works really, really well. Another way to promote root growth is using a rooting hormone or a rooting powder. With this one, I mix it in with a little bit of water and I can water it into my plants. So if, for example, I'm using sphagnum moss to propagate a plant, I'll mix in this rooting hormone in some water and just water the sphagnum moss with this. So I like to use this also for any plants that I have coming in new. So if I have a really rare plant that is coming in and I'm nervous about it and I really want to make sure that it roots well, I'll go ahead and add a little bit of rooting hormone to the soil, to the substrate, just to give me the best possible chance of keeping that plant nice and happy. As I said, this was a conversation, so I'm really keen to hear if I missed anything that you feel is really important to have in your plant collection, because I find that this really grows and it changes as I start to grow my plants and find different things that sort of promote or support their growth. So if there's anything that I've missed out, please do let me know in the comment area. Who knows, we might be able to put together the ultimate plant care guide for any plant enthusiast out there. We could be trailblazing right now. So let me know what you think was really important. This was mine. I would love to hear yours. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, keep planting.